Hello, Enrich community. This is your virtual bestie, Simran Adderley. Welcome back to the Rich Podcast, a show where we explore topics that inspire personal and professional growth. We have Joti Mann in the house. She is a social and marketing strategist, and I cannot wait to delve into the topic that we're going to be discussing today. And when we first connected last year at an event, I was very inspired by her that she's a businesswoman and she is also a mother of 2 kids. So very inspiring. So I was like, we need to have a conversation. And because one day I also want to be a mother and all the things that I'm doing right now currently. So I wanted to delve into the topic. And this is something that's important to talk about. So welcome to the show, Joti.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to do this. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Joti, her background. Joti is an experienced social and digital marketer. She has successfully collaborated with various industries, creating impactful brands and amplifying their voices online. She's also a mom of 2 beautiful kids who are her biggest inspirations. Joti is currently engaged in building Mom's Chai and a brand that celebrates culture while embracing tradition and quality. Her journey towards wellness is a testament to her commitment to living authentically and prioritizing self-care to foster her best life. That's beautiful. Welcome once again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as discussed before, today our main focus is to talk about what does it look like to be a mother, and also wearing all these hats that not just societal pressure, but our own pressure that we put upon ourselves. So let's dive right into the topic and talk about motherhood. What does it look like being a mother and also being a mompreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks different for everybody. I think like sometimes the biggest thing to really consider too is like we can't compare ourselves to other mothers, which I feel like we do, or at least I have done multiple times. But like I think sometimes it's important to consider someone's financial background. Do they have a big village to help them? Are they on their own? Are they near family? Like all these things really do play a factor into being a mom and raising your kids and also working and all that sort of stuff. But it's truly an incredible journey, one of the hardest and one of the most beautiful things I have ever done, and I don't think really anything or anyone can really prepare you for it. It's one thing that I've learned, just like if you know, you know. It's like wow, it's also a very humbling experience as well. So for me, it's been a learning curve for sure. And I also think you get into a routine of like having one kid and then you're like, oh, I think I got it, and then you have another and you're like, okay, no, like we're back to square one. We need to redo this routine and understand how it works. So it's been a journey.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I did wanted to jump into, the mental health and emotional side of things here. How do you handle day-to-day activities when it comes to, having a toddler and you want to do other things as well in life and balance everything out? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I think for me, I have to figure out what is a priority and what isn't a priority.
Right.
And especially when becoming a mom, you really have to learn to say no, which I do think it becomes easier because now it's just a matter of, is this task or is this event or is this party more important, or is being there for my children more important? And most of the time it's the latter. So it's like, I would rather be there for my children. Okay. And then it's kind of like, I think the 3 biggest things for me is learning how to manage my time, setting my priorities, and learning to say no are the 3 like key things. So I really care about taking care of my health and taking care of my body, because the more I take care of myself, the better mother I am. And not just a mother, the better wife that I am, the better person I am. Because you don't want to be around me if I haven't slept or if I haven't been able to take care of me. Because I think to just sort of say like, and you can kind of understand if you haven't slept or, that irritability and you don't know how to function, you don't know how to like, and it's like the brain fog and everything. So I really just focus on what is the main task that I need to get to done today, and what is the main priority between, the first, second, and third, and is there anything that I can just say no to, that this isn't important? Let's cross it off the list.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that you share that it's so important to say no and prioritize what's important, because we don't have a lot of, like, I'm not saying we don't have a lot of role models, but growing up, we saw mothers doing it all. And they never talked about postpartum. They never really shared how they felt after having a kid. They went back into the same routine that they were used to doing that before. So thank you for sharing that. And I don't see a lot of mothers, especially in their generation, saying no a lot. It's like, no, I got it. But I know at the end of the day, they're tired, they're frustrated, they're agitated. How did you come to a point where you're like, no, I have to say no, even though there are not people around you that you looked up, not saying they of course have their beautiful side as well about other things, but especially in our generation, seeing our mothers getting back to working or doing like the essential things that they were doing, the normal routine. How did you navigate through that part where you became that person? You're like, it's okay to say no.
It was very hard. I think I have grown up being a people pleaser. I don't know if it has to be with the youngest kid. I don't know what it is, but I definitely was a huge people pleaser, and I did not know how to set boundaries. I think that just happened even getting married and in-laws and the whole dynamics of this South Asian culture and what the expectations are and everything. And it took me a while. I actually had to get help. I went to someone else to speak to, someone professional to pay to be like, this is what I'm going through. Please help me. How do I set these boundaries? Because I don't know how. Like, I truly struggled with it myself. And when I had my daughter, I don't know what it is, like becoming a mother really lit this fire inside of me where it was just like, I will do anything to protect this child because this is like my child. And all of a sudden, anybody around that I did not appreciate or did not respect my boundaries, it just became so much easier to be like, I am her voice. I have to stand up for her because no one else is going to.
Right.
So that's up to me to teach her. Like, would I want her to stand up for herself? Would I always like try and switch the roles to be like, my daughter is looking at me as another woman and she's looking at me and I am her hero.
So essentially, let's talk about awareness around mental and emotional side of things when it comes to being a mother. Because growing up, we've seen our mothers just saying yes to everything, super exhausted, tired. And I definitely want to talk about boundaries, as you mentioned earlier. How did you come to the point where you're like, I am okay to say no, even though being like a South Asian ourselves, it's hard to say no, right? How did you come to the point where you're like, no, I'm okay with saying no to things?
For me, it was really important because I realized that, first of all, I am my daughter's voice at that time when she's a baby. She can't speak, nor does she understand or communicate. And like, so I have to be that voice. Everything that I do and say affects her. And I realized that if I don't start speaking up now, then my daughter's going to look at me and think that that's okay. Just kind of like how when we would look up to our parents and then see how they did things. Because essentially, I am teaching her how to be human. And I'm like, I want to make sure that I am raising a strong woman. And in order for me to do that, I need to start taking care of myself and realize that, okay, if someone's being disrespectful, if there's an event that I don't want to go to because I don't feel that it's a priority or I don't feel like it's going to help me grow any further, then I'm going to start to say no. And I'm going to start telling people that, hey, you're disrespecting my boundaries or X, Y, and Z. I need to start speaking up and using my voice because I want my daughter to do the same. And if I don't start doing that, then she's going to think it's okay for other people to walk on her. And that was like the biggest like switch that had to go off in me because I know that I've grown up being like a people pleaser and always kind of bending my back to do anything that they want or just being very lenient and that kind of thing. So that was kind of like the biggest switch for me to be like, okay, like I'm a mom now, I have kids, and it's really important for them to look up to me and my husband and know that you're allowed to use your voice. It's okay to say no. And if people disrespect you, then, you have to set your boundaries.
Right. And like a lot of times we're teaching others how to treat us, right? That's like the biggest takeaway when you're setting boundaries. And it's so hard already sometimes, even when you're transitioning from like being a people pleaser to being like a healthy boundary setter. That's also so hard. And you're like pressured by like with your own inner voice. At the same time, now you're looking at the outside world and you're looking at this big responsibility that you have. So I think that, not saying it makes it easier, but I think it gives you a reason, big why of why you're doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to like remember that the people that are like going to be there for you are going to respect you.
Right.
Boundaries. And if they can't respect you, then you know that they were just trying to use you or push you or because they wanted things their way. So it's like, it kind of sets things clear and you get to know that like it's that at the end of the day, you're going to be respected just like you're going to respect the other person. So
that's so true. I love that perspective. Thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to talk about postpartum depression. This is something I would love to learn as well. And it's not really talked about often.
Yeah.
I know we look at social media, it looks beautiful. Things seem so easy, especially being a mother. Recently I was looking at this video where there was a mother dancing with the kids. I absolutely loved it. It was beautiful. And I was like, goals right there. But I know that's not the only thing when it comes to being a mother. Of course, that's the fun side of things. But when it comes to the back end, like you're struggling, you could be going through postpartum depression, and something that our mothers never really talked about. They grew up, not grew up, but like they had kids, and they fell back into doing their normal things, routine. So how did you handle that aspect? Is this something that you went through yourself?
Yeah, I think before even having kids, the thought of postpartum was never even in my head. I don't even think no one's ever really talked about it to me, at least, especially being the first one that had a kid in our families and the friend groups and stuff. The thought of like what goes on after having a kid was just not there. And then when I did have my daughter, it was just a whole whirlwind of like, wow, what is happening? Because you go through labor, your body just went through this trauma, and now you're healing, and you're like living in like diapers because your body is healing itself. And then on top of that, you have to care for a human being. And on top of that, you have the biggest hormone drop that you're going to go through is postpartum. And you're going through all these emotions, and sometimes it's just hard to understand, like, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel sad? Why do I want to cry? Even though I'm so happy and I'm so grateful and this baby is so perfect and so innocent. But at the same time, it's like, oh my God, like my emotions are everywhere. And then the lack of sleep really kicks in, because I feel like having a lack of sleep is also a really big impact on your postpartum life, and whether you're going through depression or anxiety. And I think that happens regardless if you don't have kids or not. When you start having a lack of sleep, you start to feel a change in your personality, a change in the way you're acting, your fogginess. So I thought that when you add on the hormone changes and a baby on top of that, it's just like a whole, like, wow, what am I going through? Why is this happening? And for me personally, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it for a long time. It took a lot of research. I actually would always look for moms that had kids that were content creators and stuff, and I would try one of their blogs, and I would try to read to be like, okay, are they going through it, and did they share it anywhere? Because sometimes they didn't share it on their page, but they would share it on their blog, right? And they would write about it. And then so I would always try to find someone that was actually going through it just like me, so I didn't have to feel so abnormal. And then it was when a nurse had called me like 2 weeks into having my kid and had a conversation with me that I was like, oh my God, like, so what I'm going through is normal. Like and the fact that like 99% of women after having a kid go through baby blues. And that is just where you're crying. and there could be no specific reason, but you just need to let out all your emotions because your hormones are changing. You can be on night sweats, like just all these things are going on in your body. And then on top of that, I think it depends on who you're surrounded with. Sometimes that could also give you anxiety. And I also had my daughter, I just mentioned, during COVID. So that in itself was also like a lot going on. You're like, don't touch my child. And it was, I don't know, just like all the unknown was there. And having my second one was a different experience because of the understanding, that knowledge that I had compared to having my first. Right. But just going through all that and having those emotions, I think it's a very lonely and very confusing time, but it's definitely one that we can work through.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for sharing that experience. You also mentioned about you didn't know much about postpartum depression. What does that feel like? You feel like you're going crazy. Yeah. Now imagine men on the other side, like your husband. Like, I really wonder what he was thinking. And it kind of brings a question in my head, like, why do we talk about this more openly? Because men need to be more aware about these topics too. At the end of the day, it's a partnership. Yeah. Right. So when it came to, your situation, how was it like with your husband? Like, was it doing a lot of research? Did you had to have a lot of conversations with him about the same topic again and again, even though it can be overwhelming and tiring at the same time? What would you recommend, someone who's planning to have a kid in the future, and, these conversations are not easy to have? So something that maybe you can share from your own experience.
Yeah, I think that like when I first started to feel everything that I was feeling, I remember going to like my husband and saying like, I just want to cry. I don't know why it's so sad. And his answer was always something really dumb in my opinion, but to, just go hang out. with people. Like, you need to be around people. And it's like, yeah, like, sure, that can help you feel better in that moment. But you still gotta go home and deal with all your feelings afterwards.
Right.
And it's like, what do you do then when you go back? I don't think, in general, a lot of men understand it. And I think it also depends on the personality and who they are. And I should mention, I think it also depends on how they were raised.
Right.
Because depending on how their parents were, and then, you know, everything's passed down on what they see, what they think is normal. So having that conversation, it's important. It's hard, and it's going to take time for them to understand. I think also realizing that not every guy is just going to understand, like, oh, like, my wife's going through like postpartum depression. Like, what does that even mean? Right. And it's like, I didn't understand it myself, so to expect someone else to understand it, it's kind of unfair.
Right.
So does have to do with a lot of research. It has to do a lot of talking to someone. I've actually also called the hospital, the nurses line, just because I didn't understand. So I was like, who do I ask questions to, right? Like, who do you even go to when you're feeling a certain way? And I'm also like a very spiritual person. So like I did have I went to someone that could help me spiritually in like that sense, and just having those conversations, because that's what I like more. Like, I didn't want to go to a therapist, but I wanted to go to some professional. So I went to someone that was a therapist, but just does things differently.
Right.
And I was like, I like don't know what's happening. I need someone to talk to. And sometimes you can talk to friends.
Right.
But sometimes you don't want to talk to your friend, or you want to talk to someone that doesn't know you. Because I find that sometimes it's easier to go to a stranger and just let everything out because they don't know you and they're not judging you.
That is so true.
So that was what I kind of had to do. And I also just had to accept it. And that took me a while as well to just accept that I'm feeling this way. It was months, I should mention. Like months and months in postpartum before I even realized what I was feeling and going through was not like a normal thing. Normal in the sense of like before postpartum. But I've also read that it could take up to like 2 or 3 years before you start to even feel like yourself, which definitely did for me. It took me a year and a bit to start feeling like, oh my God, like I feel like myself again. And to separate the identity of that you're not just a mom and that you're not just someone's wife, and to really like be like, okay, like who am I again? Because you start to lose focus on taking care of yourself. And it's natural because you have to take care of another human being, and that human being needs you for every single thing, to be fed, to have their diapers changed, they can't pick themselves up, etc.
Right.
So it's like you do get into the zone of constantly taking care of someone else, but you forget to take care of yourself. And when you forget to take care of yourself, that's when I feel like all of those emotions and things build up in your head. And then you start to go through all these things, and just by becoming aware of it and understanding that, and then be like, okay, like, what can I do to become me again outside of everybody else, outside of this household, outside of being a mom and a wife or a sister and a daughter, like, or a daughter-in-law, just like all the things.
That is so true.
And then like, yeah, to bring it back to you, you'd be like, I am me before I'm anyone else.
That is so true. I love the part that you talked about identity shift, because even like you have to separate that. You're a mother, you're a wife, you're a daughter, but who are you? I love that perspective, because we forget that. Even like, I'm not a mom, sometimes I get carried away being a wife.
Yeah.
Being like a person who has a business,
or even an employee, right? Like right. And you get caught up in like those labels, and it's like, okay, but let's separate ourselves from everything else.
So true.
And understand who I am, because the more you understand yourself, the better you are able to show up in every other aspect of your life.
So true. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I do have one more question to ask you. What are some resources or support systems that you have found helpful in your journey as a mom entrepreneur? And what would you recommend to others in similar situations who are working at the same time, also want to be a great parent, want to be a present parent? And yeah, what are some strategies that you would share? I know you talked about caring about yourself and realizing, but what are some other things that maybe like one major tip that you can recommend for someone to implement in their life?
I think one thing is finding a support system. And when I say that, I mean other moms. Finding a group of moms that you can talk to, hang out with, or vent to is so huge, and it just plays a really big role, because they understand you. And finding people that understand you and know what you're going through allows you to just release and not keep things in your head or feel alone. So I think finding a group of moms, which is hard, it can be really hard. I still am trying to find more moms and people in the same kind of position as me. And then you're also building your village that way. Because your village doesn't have to be your family. Because some people don't have a large family, or they live away from their family, or everybody's always working, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So like having those group of moms where you can just text them, or even just talking to them and asking them how they are, and they ask you how you are, or you have a little picnics there, you meet up, you cook for each other, whatever it is.
That is so cute.
Having finding, that was like one thing that I learned, and it took me a long time to just, also because I didn't have anyone that was having kids, but just finding those people that are also moms, like you understand each other on a level that no one else will. And I think that's like one of the most important things you could do for yourself. Be patient with it. It takes time, but it's definitely big.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's huge. That's very important for sure. And I always like to finish off by asking every single person comes on the show as a guest speaker, what inspires and motivates you every single day?
Well, I think Korea is very easy one is my kids.
Love it.
Having them, looking at them every single day and saying, you know what, like the life we want to build together, the things that we want to do, the people that I want to make sure they become is everything. Truly everything.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time today and energy today, Joti. And I love this conversation, and I learned a lot from you. And I'm sure everyone else out there who's planning to have kids or is a mother or a parent definitely will take a lot from this.
Well, I'm glad. I love being here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Rich community, for tuning in. Thank you for always showing up and supporting us. Please don't forget to share this episode with someone that you think would find it helpful. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and leave us any review and questions that you have for us. And thank you once again. I'm leaving you with this, like I always do, sending you a lot of love and positive vibes. Take care.